You know what I've been pondering tonight? Stories. Not the wild tales folks tell, but the quiet stories we whisper to ourselves. The ones that follow us around, telling us who we are when nobody else is listening. I can see you've been carrying one of those stories. Been telling yourself the story of all those unfinished things, haven't you? All those dreams sitting half-built like old barns in overgrown fields. But here's something I learned watching seasons turn for more years than I care to count. The story you tell yourself about those half-built barns, that ain't the only story worth telling, friend. See, you've been whispering to yourself that you're the person who starts but never finishes. The dreamer who can't quite make dreams real. The one who's always a day late and a dollar short. That's one story, sure enough. But it's not the true story, friend. The true story goes more like this. You're the person who keeps planting seeds even when the ground seems hard. Every morning you wake up and tend to what needs tending, even when your heart feels heavy. Those dreams you think you abandoned, they're still growing in you, quiet as roots spreading deep underground. I knew a woman once who spent 15 years thinking she was a failed artist because her paintings never hung in fancy galleries. Told herself that story so many times it wore grooves in her mind. But what she really was someone who painted joy into every room she entered. Her neighbor's kitchen, bright with sunflowers. Her friend's baby room, soft with clouds and stars. Her own heart, a little lighter each time she picked up that brush. You see, the stories we tell ourselves, they're like fences around our hearts. Tell yourself you're not enough, and those fences close in tight. Tell yourself you're behind everyone else, and you'll spend your days running toward horizons that keep moving away. But change that story, friend. Change that story, and suddenly there's room to breathe. Maybe instead of the person who never finishes, you're the person who knows when to let things grow at their own pace, who's wise enough to tend the garden of your life with patience instead of pressure. Maybe instead of the person who's fallen behind, you're the person who's learned to walk your own path, who's discovered that the sweetest berries grow on the trails less traveled.
Maybe instead of the person who dreams too much, you're the person whose dreams light up the world for others, who carries hope like a lantern in the dark. I remember meeting a man at one of life's crossroads 20 years back. He'd been telling himself for decades that he was the kind of man who let opportunities slip by. Said his whole life was just one missed chance after another. He was so focused on all the light that had escaped, he couldn't see the gentle glow that was still there. We talked for hours about all the jobs he didn't take, all the words he didn't say, all the risks he didn't dare. And when he was done laying out those regrets like old clothes, I asked him something simple. What if those weren't missed opportunities? What if they were your soul being wise enough to wait for something better? See, sometimes what looks like hesitation is really intuition. Sometimes what feels like failure is just life protecting you from something that wasn't meant for you. Sometimes the path that seems wrong is the only path that could have led you to this moment. The beautiful truth about stories is they're alive. They breathe and change and grow. That story you've been carrying about yourself, it's not carved in stone. It's more like morning fog. It can shift and lift and reveal new landscapes you never knew were there. I've watched folks bloom like prairie wildflowers just by changing the story they tell about their past. That job that ended? Maybe it wasn't failure. Maybe it was the universe making room for something your heart was calling for. That relationship that didn't work? Maybe it wasn't proof you weren't lovable. Maybe it was love itself, keeping you available for something real. That dream you set aside to care for others? Friend, that wasn't giving up. That was love in work clothes. And love like that doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes the foundation everything else is built on. Those mistakes you made along the way, they weren't proof you weren't good enough. They were just human, beautiful, necessary, perfectly human. Like scars on old wood that make it stronger, more interesting, more real. I think about my grandfather sometimes, gone these 30 years now. Never finished school, never owned much more than decent boots, but he knew his own worth. Used to tell me, boy, you don't measure a tree by how fast it grows. You measure it by how deep its roots go, how much shade it gives, how long it stands. He understood something most folks spend their whole lives learning. Success isn't about racing to some finish line. It's about growing strong where you're planted, reaching toward the light at your own pace. Here's the story I see when I look at you. Someone who cares so deeply it sometimes hurts. Someone who carries others' burdens like they weigh nothing, even when your own feel heavy. Someone who's learned that life isn't a straight line. It curves and goes around obstacles, and that's not weakness, that's wisdom. You're someone who still shows up day after day, even when showing up feels hard. Someone who still hopes, even when hope feels fragile. Someone who's still here, still listening, still believing tomorrow might hold something good. That's not a small story, friend. That's courage wearing everyday clothes. That's love that doesn't quit even when the going gets slow. That's a soul that refuses to give up on itself.
And those unfinished projects, maybe they're not abandoned. Maybe they're just waiting. Waiting for the right season, the right moment, the right version of you to pick up where you left off. I knew a man who planted an orchard when he was 35. Spent years tending saplings while neighbors planted crops that would feed them that season. 20 years later, those trees were feeding not just him, but his children, grandchildren, folks from 3 counties over. But during those first 10 years, when the trees were just shadows against the sky, some called him foolish. Your dreams are like those apple trees. Just because you can't taste the fruit yet doesn't mean the roots aren't growing deep and strong. Just because others can't see what you're building doesn't mean it isn't real, isn't valuable, isn't exactly what this world needs. You know what else I learned? Sometimes the most important work we do is work nobody sees. The small kindnesses, the quiet courage, the way we keep choosing hope when despair would be easier, the way we show up for people we love, even when we don't feel like showing up for ourselves. That's the work that changes the world, one heart at a time. Not grand gestures that make newspapers, but steady, faithful love that makes life worth living. When the world tells you you're behind, remember, every master craftsman started with shaky hands. Every garden began with bare earth. Every friendship started with strangers choosing to trust. The timeline that matters isn't the world's, it's yours. I've seen people spend decades chasing someone else's version of success, only to discover it fit them about as well as borrowed boots. But when they finally gave themselves permission to walk their own path, to build their own kind of life, that's when the magic happened. Your story isn't about catching up to anyone else. It's about becoming who you truly are.
in your own time, in your own way. And friend, that person you're becoming, the world's been waiting for them. There was a woman I knew who thought she was too old to start over at 50. Told herself the story that her best years were behind her, that it was too late to chase dreams. But she started writing anyway. Little stories at first, then bigger ones. By 60, she had 3 published books. By 70, she was teaching others who thought they were too old, too late, too far behind.
The story she told herself at 50 would have kept her small forever. The story she chose at 51 changed everything. What story are you ready to change, friend? Maybe you're not the person who's always behind. Maybe you're the person who takes time to do things right. Maybe you're not the person who can't finish things. Maybe you're the person who knows when something needs more time to grow. Maybe you're not the person whose best days are behind them. Maybe you're the person whose deepest wisdom is just beginning to bloom. Maybe you're not too old, too late, too anything. Maybe you're right on time for the life you were always meant to live. The story you tell yourself tomorrow morning when you wake up, that story has power. It can keep you small or help you grow. It can trap you in yesterday or open doors to tomorrow. Choose the one that makes you feel more like yourself, not less. Life isn't a race, friend. It's not a test you can fail or a game you can lose. It's a garden, and you're both the gardener and the seed. Some seasons you'll focus on planting, some on tending, some on harvesting. All of them matter. All of them are part of the story. Your story isn't over. Might be it's just getting to the good part, the part where you realize you were never broken, never behind, never not enough. You were just growing, becoming, learning to bloom in your own season. The dreams that feel impossible, they're not. They're just dressed up like challenges to see if you want them badly enough to be patient with yourself while you grow into them. The goals that feel too big, break them down to seed size. Plant one today, water it tomorrow, trust it to grow even when you can't see progress. Gardens don't grow overnight, but they do grow. The person you want to become, you're already becoming them. Every kind word, every small courage, every time you choose hope over fear, you're watering those seeds of who you're meant to be. Rest easy tonight, friend. Let that old story about not being enough drift away. Let yourself be held by this truth. You are exactly where you need to be, becoming exactly who you're meant to become, at exactly the right pace for your soul. Your timing is perfect, even when it doesn't feel that way. Your pace is right, even when others seem to be moving faster. Your story is unfolding exactly as it should, with all its plot twists and quiet chapters and moments of pure grace. Sleep well, dear friend. Tomorrow's page is blank and waiting for you to fill it with whatever story makes your heart feel most at home. And that story, whatever it is going to be beautiful. Your story is still being written, and it's more wonderful than you could ever imagine.